Hello everybody and welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about whether the 911, the manual 911, is actually irrelevant. PDK is faster, it's more economical, it's better for the environment, it helps with the longevity of the components because you can't over rev or damage the clutch and so on, and it makes it much more usable. So is there really any point now in having a manual 911? Today I'm going to drive this fantastic 992S, which has the manual option. I'm going to tell you what that entails and how that works in terms of the car. Does it still make sense? If you like classic cars, then the chances are that, like me, you believe that the only possible option for a performance car is to have a manual. But in modern cars, does that really make sense? So I have briefly driven a 992 with a PDK gearbox, and it was an incredibly impressive thing. Handling is immense, road holding, everything, but it left me, it was a bit, I don't know what the word is, cynical. It just wasn't, it didn't excite in the least. It was just too good for it, in my view. Is it possible that the manual will change that? Well, the facts are quite telling. If you look at worldwide sales of 991s, I couldn't find any figures for 992s, but for 991s, just 10% worldwide were manuals. More surprisingly, perhaps, is that the GT3 versions, which you would think, well, at least those would probably have a majority of manuals, they don't. GT3 sales worldwide were 40% manual and the rest were PDK. Apart from, really bizarrely, in America. You guys in the US, when you buy the GT3 models, you plump 70% for manuals and just 30% for the PDK, which is not what you'd expect. Now this has 444 horsepower, which is just, I think, immense for pretty much a cooking 911. I know it's the S, so it's a bit above the normal version, but it's a stonking amount of power for, you know, I know it is turbo, but for the non-turbo, it is just immensely quick. I know I tend to drive the older stuff, so I'm not used to it, but it's got power everywhere. You can rev it, you can not rev it. It's incredible. It is unbelievable what these modern 911s can do. So the manual version is about 0.8 of a second slower to 60 than the PDK. So PDK does it, I think, in 3.3 and the manual in 4 seconds. Let me just tell you that is absolutely, totally irrelevant on the road. On the track, maybe if you're racing someone, it will help. But on the road, this feels just as quick, if not. At lower speeds, it actually feels quicker than the PDK. I don't know why. To me, it feels more immediate. But the crucial thing is that how a car feels on the road is about how it responds while it's in gear. And while it's in gear, to me, it feels every bit as fast as the PDK. Just the fact that it changes gear faster doesn't make any difference to how quick the car feels. So in that way, I know, okay, PDK is quicker, but it makes no difference whatsoever. That's not a true benefit of PDK. Now let's look at whether buying the manual option, first of all, makes sense financially. It is a no-cost option from Porsche for the 992, but you can only buy it in the S. You can't have the cooking version with manual. I don't know why. That would probably be my preferred choice, to be quite honest, because I don't think these cars need the amount of power that this has. I think it's almost a bit too much for the road. It's nice to have the lower powered version that you can try and push a little bit more. But it is a no-cost option, so I think 94,000 basically buys you the manual S. But what is quite interesting is that when you get the manual, without having to tick the box, you get a sports chrono. So that also means a manual, mechanical, not a manual, limited slip diff, Porsche torque vectoring as well as standard, active engine mounts too. So essentially, by buying the manual, you are saving money. You're saving £1,800 on options. This particular car, the only real option it has, I think apart from tinted glass, is the wheels. They're different wheels. They are 21s and 20s at the front. And I think it's an incredibly handsome car. But financially, in many ways, the manual does make sense. Although, I suspect, I don't know, when it comes to resale, will it be, I think in the short term, it certainly won't be a boon. In future, if these ever become true classics, then I think perhaps it will become more desirable. I don't know, but in the short term, I suspect that it will probably hit resale values. One of the things that I find a bit annoying is that when you put it in either Sports or Sports Plus, it has that automatic blipping. So when you put it down, it blips. Now, if you're really attacking a road really hard, in a way, it can be quite nice at times to have that if you're really driving at 10/10ths or if you're on the track. But on a road like this, where you're driving at sort of 6-7/10ths, it's quite annoying because you can't switch it off unless you're in normal mode. So if you're driving a bit harder, you have to have the rev matching. And part of the extra involvement that this brings, and it definitely does bring some extra involvement, is that you're interacting more with the car, and it just takes away a level of interactment. So I don't understand the choice they made. The other thing that I will bring up is that it is more interactive, it is more fun than the PDK for me personally. I much prefer it like this, I really do, and it does make it miles more fun to drive. But I could do this whole road in one gear because the gears are so long. Why did they do that? I guess it must be for emissions, but I understand, okay, in 7th you have an overdrive, but it just, well, it doesn't make sense. Then there's hardly any point. You can change gear, but there's hardly any point. God, this is so good. I'm gonna, you know, my long-term view has always been that modern cars just aren't all that to drive. But this 911, this 992 with a manual gearbox, it's full of feel, it's playful. I have to tell you, I really love it. But ultimately, should you buy the manual version of the 992? Objectively, I've mentioned all the reasons why you shouldn't. It's worse for economy, it's worse for usability. They're the two big ones, to be honest. The performance stuff is, to me, irrelevant. And if you're driving your own car, the fact that it's, you know, helps component longevity, I think that's a bit of a red herring as well, quite frankly, because, you know, if you drive it reasonably decently, you're not going to trash a gearbox. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. If you're having to buy a 992, buy a manual. I mean, there are other manuals that might work better. I think the Caymans come to mind, really. But if you have to have a 911, this is great. This really is a lot more fun and a lot more capable than I thought it was going to be. What a car. Thank you all so much for watching. Hugely appreciate it. And I really look forward to seeing you for the next video. If you need to contact me, then Instagram is the best way. If you have a car you want me to review, again, Instagram is the best way to contact me. See you soon.